Betrayal in business doesn't arrive like thunder. It arrives like a whisper in the boardroom, a pause too long in an email thread, a smile that doesn't quite reach the eyes. My name is Victoria Lane, 29 years old, investment analyst at Halcyon Capital, a firm people whispered about with awe, envy, and sometimes fear. From the outside, we looked untouchable, glass offices that glimmered above the city, numbers that climbed like skyscrapers, deals that turned millions into billions. For 6 years, I gave everything I had to this place. My time, my health, my youth. I carved myself into the perfect employee, sharp, efficient, loyal. I believed if I was good enough, I'd be safe. I was wrong. It began the way all great downfalls do, with something small. A discrepancy, a shadow, a voice I almost ignored. The first time I noticed, I was reviewing a quarterly report for a renewable energy fund. Numbers were my language. I could hear them breathe, catch when they coughed. And these numbers coughed. Expenses didn't align. Profits were inflated by fractions that didn't belong. It wasn't enough to raise alarms, not yet, but it was enough to feel wrong. I told myself it was human error. But in Halcyon, errors didn't survive. Everything was checked 3 times before a single signature landed on paper. Still, I closed the file and told myself to forget it. I didn't forget. At Halcyon, the culture was worship. We worshipped Nathan Cross, our CEO. He was the kind of man who could walk into a room and make you forget your own name. His voice had the cadence of certainty, his smile the heat of the sun. To clients, he was a prophet. To us, he was a king. And kings don't make mistakes. Then there was Clara Monroe, my closest colleague, my sounding board, the one who sat beside me through endless nights of models and forecasts. Clara was 2 years older, with a laugh that turned heads and a temper that could shatter glass. She always said we were sisters by survival, bound by ambition and the understanding that no one in Halcyon cared about your soul, only your output. But sometimes I caught her watching me with something sharper than friendship, as if she was calculating, as if she knew something I didn't. I ignored that too. The weeks bled into each other. Endless 12-hour days, deals stacked like dominoes, clients hungry for miracles. My body lived in the office. My apartment became just a place I paid rent for. Every morning, I arrived before the sun. Every night, I left when the city's towers flickered with insomnia. One Friday, Clara invited me for drinks. We sat at a rooftop bar, neon bleeding into our glasses. She leaned close and said, "Do you ever feel like you're building a castle for someone else, brick by brick, while you're still stuck in the basement?" I laughed. All the time. Her eyes glittered. Then maybe one day we stopped building. It was a strange thing to say. At the time, I thought she meant burnout. I didn't realize she was hinting at something darker. The turning point came 3 weeks later. I was alone in the office past midnight, running a sensitivity model. I left my desk to clear my head, and as I passed Nathan's corner office, I noticed his door slightly ajar. Lights on, papers scattered. Nathan never left chaos behind. Curiosity is a dangerous thing, but I pushed the door. Inside, files were spread across the desk. Contracts, ledgers, wire transfers. At the center was a document stamped with my initials, VL, a signature that looked like mine, but wasn't. My throat tightened. I scanned the page. It was an approval for a shell company investment, one I'd never seen, never touched. Tens of millions flowing through accounts offshore. My name tied to every transfer. The room swayed. I dropped the paper back onto the pile. My pulse beat, so hard it hurt. Someone cleared their throat behind me. I spun. It was Clara. "Late night," she said, her tone too casual. Her eyes, however, flicked from the desk to me, sharp and knowing. Yeah, couldn't sleep. She smiled, not her usual smile. This one was thinner, private, careful. Vic curiosity killed the analyst. And then she closed the door behind me. I walked back to my desk, my legs weak. My reflection stared at me from the dark glass, pale, wide-eyed, trembling. For years, I had believed I was climbing a ladder. Tonight, I realized the ladder was leaning against a wall of lies. But what I didn't know yet was that the wall wasn't just Nathan's. It wasn't just Clara's. It stretched further, wider, all the way back to someone I thought I could trust. The next morning, I opened a new file on my laptop. Across the top, I typed 3 words: observe, record, survive. I wasn't just an analyst anymore. I was the only one left to audit the truth. The weekend felt like a fever I couldn't sweat out. I tried to convince myself I had imagined it, that the signature in Nathan's office was a fluke, a draft, a placeholder. But the image burned into my brain, my initials tied to millions of dollars siphoned through names I didn't recognize. By Monday morning, I was back in Halcyon's tower of glass. The elevator ride felt longer than usual, every floor a reminder that I was about to walk into a place where the walls themselves were lying. When the doors opened, Clara was already at her desk, perfectly composed. She wore a crimson blouse that clashed with her smile. "Rough weekend?" she asked. "Just long," I said. Her eyes lingered on me a second too long, as if searching for cracks. Then she returned to her screen, fingers flying across the keyboard. At 9 a.m. sharp, Nathan summoned the entire investment team to the boardroom. His presence always filled a room before he even entered it. Today, he looked like he was carved from marble, perfect suit, perfect posture, perfect charm. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, his voice a calm tide, "Halcyon is entering a new era. Our growth in the last quarter has surpassed expectations. But growth without vision is just chaos. We need strategy, precision, discipline." He spoke about a new global fund, one that would double our assets under management in 12 months. Investors were salivating. Governments were courting us. The room buzzed with awe, but all I could think about was the forged document. If Nathan could fake one signature, how many more had he created? And why mine? When the meeting ended, Clara brushed past me, whispering, "Don't look so serious. People might think you don't trust him." I froze. That was the first time she'd admitted, without admitting, that there was something to distrust. The next days blurred into one another. I buried myself in spreadsheets, double-checking old deals. Patterns emerged like bruises. Inflated valuations, circular transfers, money flowing into companies that had no offices, no staff, no history. And my name appeared just often enough to make it impossible to call coincidence. At night, I couldn't sleep. My apartment felt smaller than ever, like the walls were pressing in. I started locking my bedroom door, even though I lived alone. On Wednesday, Clara invited me to lunch. We went to a small Italian place down the street, the kind of spot where deals were made quietly over espresso. She ordered for both of us without asking. Halfway through the meal, she leaned in and said, "You've been digging." I froze, fork suspended. "Excuse me?" "You've always had that look when you're chasing numbers. Focused, obsessed. But now it's different. Now it's dangerous." "Clara." She interrupted with a smile, but her eyes were steel. "Listen to me, Vic. You're good. Too good. But being good doesn't mean being safe. Sometimes the smartest move is to stop asking questions." Her words landed like a warning wrapped in friendship. I forced a laugh. "You sound like you're quoting a mob movie." "Maybe I am." She sipped her wine, gaze never leaving mine. "Just remember, you're not the only one watching." That night, I stayed late again. The office was silent, the city lights painting the windows. I logged into the internal system, searching deeper into the renewable fund. My heart hammered with every click. And then I found it, a folder buried under layers of innocuous files, labeled with a single letter, H. Inside were dozens of contracts. Every single one carried my signature, not forged sloppily this time, but perfect replicas. The dates spanned over a year. The amounts were staggering, hundreds of millions. I printed one page and slipped it into my bag. Evidence. Proof. But when I turned, Clara was standing in the doorway. "Working late again?" she asked softly. I swallowed. "You too." She walked in slowly, heels tapping against the marble floor. "You should go home, Vic, get some rest." "Yeah, I will." Her eyes dropped to my bag, just for a second. Then she smiled, that same thin smile from Nathan's office. "See you tomorrow." When she left, my hands shook so hard I could barely log out. I knew then that Clara wasn't just watching me, she was part of it. Back at my apartment, I spread the document across my kitchen table. The numbers glared back at me like an accusation. If the SEC ever saw this, if regulators dug even a little, I'd be the one crucified. I thought of Nathan's speeches, of Clara's warnings, of the way the firm seemed too perfect to be real. And I realized this wasn't about mistakes. This was deliberate, systematic. But why me? Why my name? My phone buzzed. A blocked number. I hesitated, then answered. A man's voice, low and familiar. "Victoria, it's David." My breath caught. David Hale, my old mentor. The man who had recruited me into Halcyon, who left suddenly 2 years ago without explanation. "David? How? Why are you calling me?" "Because," he said, "you've found the edge of the cliff. And before you jump, you should know who's waiting at the bottom." The line went dead. I stared at the phone, my reflection fractured in the dark screen. For the first time in years, I felt truly afraid. The next morning, I barely recognized myself in the mirror. My eyes were ringed with exhaustion, my reflection thinner. Somehow, like the truth itself had started to strip me down. I walked into the office with the forged document hidden inside a folder at the bottom of my bag. Every step felt heavier than the last. Nathan was already there, shaking hands with a delegation of investors flown in from Dubai. His charm was effortless, his confidence absolute. Watching him, I almost believed the illusion again. Almost. Clara passed by, whispering, "Smile. People notice when you don't." Her perfume lingered like a warning. At noon, I received a calendar invite. Lunch with Nathan, private dining room. My pulse spiked. This wasn't casual. Nathan didn't waste time on pleasantries unless he had a reason. The dining room was high above the city, glass walls flooding it with light. A table set for two. Nathan stood at the window, hands clasped behind his back, a king surveying his empire. "Victoria," he said warmly, turning to me, "please sit." I obeyed, though every instinct screamed to run. He poured wine himself, unusual for a man who usually let others serve. "You've been working late," he said. I forced a smile. "Halcyon keeps me busy." He studied me for a long moment, his gaze too sharp to be casual. Then, leaning in, he said, "Loyalty is everything here. Do you understand that?" "Yes," I whispered. "Good." He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Because sometimes loyalty means signing papers you don't fully read. Sometimes it means trusting that the greater good outweighs the fine print. My throat dried. He knew. He raised his glass. To trust. I clinked mine against his, forcing the motion. Inside, my stomach twisted. That evening, I received another blocked call. David again. "Meet me," he said. "Tonight. Old Pier 17, Warehouse with the broken sign. Midnight. David, what's happening? Why did you leave Halcyon? You'll see, he said, but be careful. If they suspect, they'll destroy you. The line went dead. I spent hours debating whether to go. It felt like a trap, but the forged signatures in my bag told me I had no choice. At midnight, the pier was silent except for the groan of waves against rotting wood. The warehouse loomed, its windows dark. I stepped inside cautiously. David emerged from the shadows. Older, thinner, eyes darting as if every corner hid a threat. You came, he said. Tell me what's going on, I demanded. Why is my name on forged contracts? He exhaled. Because they need a fall person. Halcyon's entire renewable fund is a shell game. Fake companies, fake projects, billions siphoned offshore. They forged your signature because you're clean, respected, the perfect scapegoat. When it collapses, and they'll point to you. They'll say you went rogue. My knees almost buckled. Why me? Because Nathan likes to make his victims useful before he discards them. And Clara, his expression darkened. Clara knows how to groom loyalty. She's done it before. I thought of her warnings, her watchful eyes. Suddenly, they felt less like concern and more like chains. David handed me a flash drive. Proof. Contracts, transfers, offshore accounts. I've been collecting it since I left. But it's not enough. I need the missing piece. The box in Nathan's office. Clara guards it like her life depends on it. I took the drive with shaking hands. Why didn't you go to the authorities? He laughed bitterly. I tried. My testimony disappeared. Evidence vanished. Halcyon owns too many people. You need a different strategy. Which is, expose them from the inside. Catch them in real time. And don't trust anyone. Suddenly, headlights cut across the warehouse floor. A car door slammed. David cursed. They followed you. Figures entered. 2 men in tailored suits. Their movements too sharp, too controlled. Halcyon's private security. Run, David hissed. I bolted, sprinting through the side door as footsteps thundered behind me. My lungs burned as I tore down the pier. The flash drive clutched in my hand. A shout rang out, then the crack of something metallic, maybe a gun, maybe a door slamming. I didn't stop until I reached the main road and flagged down a cab, breathless, trembling. When I finally collapsed into the back seat, the driver asked, "Rough night?" "You have no idea," I whispered. Back in my apartment, I locked every bolt, shoved a chair under the doorknob, and plugged the flash drive into my laptop. Files bloomed across the screen. Contracts, wire transfers, offshore accounts, photographs of Nathan shaking hands with ministers in countries where the money vanished. And then a folder labeled with my initials. Inside were memos I had never written, emails I had never sent, all painting a picture of me as the architect of the fraud. The narrative was already prepared. I realized with icy clarity, they weren't just setting me up. They were already telling my story. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Nathan's smile across the wine glass, Clara's shadow in the hallway, David's warning echoing in the empty warehouse. At dawn, I printed some of the files from the flash drive and slipped them into a plain folder. The weight of it felt dangerous in my hands, like carrying live explosives. By the time I reached the office, the lobby was buzzing. Cameras, reporters, unfamiliar men in tailored suits. Something was happening. Clara intercepted me before I could ask. "SEC auditors," she murmured, her voice low and taut. "Routine, of course. Nothing to worry about." Her eyes told me the opposite. Nathan swept into the lobby moments later, radiating calm, his handshake magnetic as he greeted the agents. "Welcome," he said warmly. "We have nothing to hide." I wanted to scream. Instead, I slipped past, clutching my folder tighter. At my desk, my inbox pinged with a new message. No subject line, no signature, just one line. Check your desk drawer. My heart stuttered. Slowly, I pulled it open. Inside lay a slim leather-bound notebook. Not mine. I flipped it open. Every page was filled with Clara's handwriting. Meeting notes, transaction logs, instructions. And in the margins, initials, my initials, circled again and again. She was tying me to everything. I barely had time to process before Clara appeared in my doorway. "Nathan wants you in the boardroom," she said, her voice steady, her eyes sharp. "Bring the notebook." I considered lying, hiding it, running. But her gaze lingered too long, and I knew the cameras in the hall saw everything. So I followed. The boardroom was a theater of glass and power. Nathan sat at the head, auditors arrayed like an audience. He gestured for me to sit beside him, close enough that I felt his confidence, like heat. "Ms. Hart," one of the auditors began, "we've reviewed several contracts bearing your signature. Could you confirm your involvement in the Clean Horizons project?" The words hung like a noose. Nathan's hand brushed mine under the table, steadying me or warning me. I drew a breath. "I'd like to see the documents." They slid a folder across the table. Inside were the same contracts I had seen on the flash drive. My name scrawled in perfect forgery. "Yes," I said slowly, "that is my signature." Clara's lips curved in the faintest smile. But I continued, my voice firming, "I did not sign this. These documents were falsified, and I can prove it." The room froze. Nathan's jaw tightened, almost imperceptibly. I reached into my bag and pulled out the plain folder. I have evidence of offshore accounts linked to Halcyon executives, wire transfers, false entities, and memos forged in my name. The auditors leaned forward, eyes sharp. Nathan leaned back, eyes colder. "Ms. Hart," he said smoothly, "are you suggesting your own company is engaged in fraud?" "I'm suggesting someone in this company is framing me." I shot back. A silence, so deep it hummed, filled the room. Finally, one of the auditors said, "We'll need to review this evidence." Nathan nodded graciously. "Of course. Transparency is our creed." But when the auditors left, his mask cracked. He turned to me, his smile sharp as a blade. "Careful, Victoria. Accusations without proof can bury you." "I have proof," I said, standing. "More than you realize." Clara rose too, her presence sudden and suffocating. "You should go home, Victoria. Rest. Let us handle this." Her hand brushed my arm, gentle on the surface, but her nails pressed just enough to sting. I walked out before they could see my hands shake. That night, David called again. "You showed them, didn't you?" "Yes," I whispered, "but it's not enough." Nathan twisted it. "Clara has a notebook tying me to everything." "Then you need the box," he said. "It's the only thing that can't be explained away. The real ledger. The one Nathan keeps locked in his private safe." "Why me?" I asked, my voice cracking. "Why can't you do it?" "Because they'll kill me if I step foot near Halcyon again. But you," his voice softened, "you still have their trust. That's your weapon." My stomach churned. "How do I even get in?" "You've been in before," he said. "Board dinners, late night briefings. You know the layout. Use what you know. And hurry before they erase it all." The line clicked dead. I sat in the dark, my apartment silent except for the hum of the city outside. The flash drive glowed faintly in the laptop, waiting. The notebook lay on the table, damning me with every page. And in my mind, Nathan's words replayed, "Loyalty is everything." But loyalty had already been weaponized against me. I realized then that I couldn't just defend myself. I had to burn the illusion to the ground. The next morning, I dressed with a precision that felt like armor, charcoal suit, steady heels, hair pulled into a knot that couldn't come undone. My reflection looked calm. Inside, I was a storm. I arrived early before most of the staff. Security greeted me with their usual nods, unaware that I carried betrayal in my briefcase. My past still worked. They still believed I belonged. Nathan's private office was on the top floor, a sanctum of glass and steel. Getting in required 2 codes, one for the elevator, one for the door. The elevator code had changed, but I'd learned long ago that power leaves fingerprints, patterns in behavior, habits repeated. Nathan liked numbers tied to anniversaries. I entered the date of Halcyon's founding. The elevator hummed to life. The door code was harder. I tried his birthday. Wrong. His father's? Wrong again. My pulse thudded louder with every failure. Then I remembered Clara's words once at a gala. He only celebrates one thing, victories. I typed in the date of Halcyon's first acquisition. The lock clicked. Inside, the office was too perfect. A painting of storm-tossed seas. A decanter of scotch with 2 glasses, one still damp. And in the corner, the safe, matte black, humming with secrets. David's instructions had been clear. 3rd drawer, bottom left. He keeps the override key there. My hands shook as I slid it open. Nothing. Empty. I almost panicked, until I noticed the drawer's false bottom. A quick press, a soft release. The key gleamed like betrayal itself. The safe opened with a heavy sigh. Inside lay folders, drives, ledgers. But one box drew my eye, small, weathered, bound in leather. I lifted it gently. It wasn't just records. It was a diary. Nathan's. Each page was a confession. Names, dates, amounts. Bribes hidden as donations. Fraud dressed as growth. And scrawled in his own handwriting. VH signs when told. My initials repeated like a brand. My chest tightened. This was it. The proof. Footsteps echoed in the hall. Too soon. Too close. I shoved the diary into my briefcase, slammed the safe shut, and slipped out through the side door, just as voices spilled into the office. Nathan! Clara! Audit is under control, Clara was saying. She's rattled. She'll break. Nathan's laugh was soft and cruel. Good. When she does, we'll bury her with the rest. I didn't breathe until I was in the stairwell, running, heels in hand, briefcase clutched to my chest. By the time I reached the street, the city was awake, indifferent. I hailed a cab and whispered the address David had given me. A journalist he trusted, someone who had once exposed a senator's offshore empire. Hours later, the story broke. Halcyon under fire. Whistleblower reveals massive fraud. Nathan's face splashed across headlines. Clara's name tied to shell companies. The notebook, the diary, the transfers, all laid bare. My name was there too, but not as they'd planned. Not as a scapegoat. As the woman who refused to be erased. The fallout was immediate. Trading froze. Investors fled. The empire Nathan had built on charm and lies cracked in real time. By evening, agents escorted him out of the building in handcuffs. Clara walked behind him, head high, but her wrists bound the same. I watched from across the street, unseen in the crowd. For once, I didn't need to stand in their light. The truth was brighter than both of them. Later, in the quiet of my apartment, I opened the diary again. One last entry caught my eye, dated only weeks ago. Trust is leverage. Betrayal is strategy. Even Victoria will play her part. My hands trembled, not with fear, but with release. He had underestimated me until the very end. The phone rang. David. You did it, he said. His voice was tired, but alive. It's over. Not over, I whispered, but finished. Silence stretched. then you should be proud. I looked out the window at the city, restless and relentless. Proud wasn't the word. Empty, maybe. Free, perhaps. But beneath it all, something steadier pulsed. Resolve. Betrayal had tried to define me, but in the end, I wrote my own ending. The next day, I walked past Halcyon's glass tower one last time. Reporters still swarmed. Workers shuffled uncertainly. The building looked smaller now, its reflection cracked by scandal. I didn't stop. I didn't need to, because sometimes survival isn't about holding on, it's about letting go. And as I disappeared into the city's endless hum, I knew one thing with certainty. Nathan was right about one thing only. Loyalty is everything. But mine was never theirs to keep.